On a cold night in November 2024, 21-year-old Phoenix Spencer Horn accepted a takeaway at her flat in East Kilbride, Scotland. She texted her mother that she was just waking up, which is an ordinary message that gave no hint of the unimaginable events that's about to unfold. Hours later, everything in that quiet apartment would change, and by the time anyone realized something was wrong, Phoenix was already gone, and her boyfriend had already begun a horrifying cover-up. This is the story of Phoenix Spencer Horn. Before her name became linked to a devastating tragedy, Phoenix was simply known as a bright, tender-hearted young woman trying to build her future. At just 21, she was warm, lively, and deeply connected to her family. She and her mother were extremely close, so they made sure they exchanged messages about small, everyday moments like work, dinner plans, funny thoughts, or how her day was going. Her friends described her as the kind of person whose presence lifted a room, someone who laughed easily and cared deeply. At the time, Phoenix was dating 27-year-old Methven, a Royal Mail postman. They had been together for nearly 2 years and shared a top-floor flat in East Kilbride. On the surface, they looked like a typical young couple settling into adulthood. They worked different schedules, split expenses, had the usual relationship disagreements, and spent quiet evenings together. To outsiders, nothing about their relationship seemed alarming, but from inside, little signs of tension had already begun to show between them. Then on November 16th, 2024, Phoenix told her mother she was home having dinner. But earlier that day, Methven had messaged her saying he felt lonely while she was at work, a remark that seemed normal at the time. But later, it would be seen as a piece of a much darker picture. As the evening unfolded inside their flat, something shifted. Neighbors later told police they heard strange noises around midnight, hurried footsteps, a sudden thud, movement that made them pause. At nearly the same moment, data pulled from Methven's phone showed unusual activity inside the home, suggesting something significant was happening while the neighborhood slept. By morning, the flat Phoenix shared with Methven was no longer the safe, quiet home it had been. Within hours, it became the location of a horrific crime, one her loved ones could have never imagined. Investigators later concluded that sometime during the night, Methven violently attacked Phoenix. The assault wasn't a single moment of rage, it was sustained, deliberate, and devastatingly brutal, which made Phoenix suffer some fatal injuries. And detectives concluded that the violence went far beyond anything accidental. Whatever happened in that flat was intentional, prolonged, and deeply cruel. Yet even after taking her life, the horror did not end. Instead of panicking, calling for help, or alerting anyone, Methven entered a chilling 48-hour period of deception. He stayed inside the flat with Phoenix's body, moving between rooms as if he's trying to pretend nothing had happened, and almost immediately, he reached for Phoenix's phone, not to call emergency services, but to begin crafting a lie. He texted Phoenix's mother, pretending to be Phoenix, claiming she had just woken up. Although the messages didn't sound quite like her, but at the moment, they weren't unsettling enough to raise alarms. To her family, it seemed like Phoenix was simply resting after a long day, but behind that illusion, her body was lying only a few feet away from the man who had killed her. During those 2 days, Methven didn't just avoid the truth. He made sure he drowned himself in distractions because phone records later show that he searched for explicit content more than 170 times while Phoenix lay dead in that same flat. He also attempted to buy drugs, drifting between the bedroom, the living room, and the bedroom while meticulously avoiding the hallway where her body remained, which shows that he made no effort to move her to safety, call someone, or even take responsibility. He didn't even try to flee, but instead, he stayed inside the flat, sending messages meant to buy him time and hoping no one would come knocking at the door. His behavior didn't reflect fear or confusion, but rather it reflected a chilling detachment. But as the hours passed, the weight of the situation grew heavier. His lies stretched thinner, and the silence inside the flat became impossible to ignore. And by the second day, the facade began to crumble. On November 18, nearly 48 hours after Phoenix had been killed, Methven finally dialed 999. His voice on the call shifted between panic and performance as he told the operator he had taken cocaine, alcohol, and steroids. He said he had blacked out and couldn't remember what he had done. He also insisted he had woken up to find Phoenix dead. But in the middle of the call, he said something officers would never forget. He said, "I know she is dead, mate. She is dead." That sentence alone made everything clear. He had known she was dead long before he picked up the phone, which means the blackout story was a lie. His memory gaps were a lie, and the 48 hours of delay were deliberate. By the time emergency responders forced their way into the flat, there was nothing left to save. When police entered, the scene was deeply disturbing. The narrow hallway, normally an unremarkable part of the home, had become the center of a devastating discovery as Phoenix lay on the floor, her injuries revealing the scale and brutality of the attack. Nearby, officers found 2 blood-stained knives and a third knife in the bathroom. Their positions showed that the violence had happened over time, not in a single moment. The scene was chaotic, but also telling something clearly pointing to a deliberate and prolonged assault. Immediately, Methven was arrested. His behavior shocked officers not because he was emotionally volatile, but because he was shockingly calm. He later admitted that he had moved Phoenix's body and attempted to hide what he had done. At one point, as if commenting on something mundane, he muttered that he knew what his next 25 years would look like, almost as though he had already accepted his fate. Investigators spent hours going over the flat. They collected forensic evidence, documented every detail, and followed the digital trail Methven left behind. The messages he sent from Phoenix's phone, the explicit searches, the drug inquiries, all of it became central to the case. For detectives, it was heartbreaking to piece together the final hours of such a young woman's life, knowing the violence she endured and the deception that followed. When the case reached the High Court in Glasgow, Methven pled guilty to murder and to attempting to defeat the ends of justice. This spared the court a lengthy trial, but prosecutors still laid out every detail of his actions. They explained how he misled Phoenix's family with fake messages and spent 2 days covering up the crime instead of seeking help. His defense team argued that he had been under the influence of drugs and steroids and claimed he only had fragments of memory, but prosecutors highlighted how his behavior was calculated, intentional, and sustained and directly contradicted any claim of confusion. The judge was firm in his condemnation. He called the crime dreadful and truly appalling. He spoke about the trust Phoenix had placed in Methven and how that trust had been shattered in the worst possible way. He acknowledged the deep emotional harm inflicted on Phoenix's family, especially the pain caused by receiving messages written by the man who killed her. Methven was then sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 23 years before he can be considered for parole. It was a sentence meant to reflect not just the brutality of the crime, but the cold, deliberate choices that followed. For Phoenix's family, the verdict brought some relief, but no sense of closure. Her mother, Allison, faced a pain that no parent should ever experience: the realization that she had been texting with her daughter's killer, believing Phoenix was safe, and every message she had read felt like a wound reopening. Friends said the days and weeks after her death felt surreal. They kept expecting Phoenix to walk in, smiling, but instead, they were left mourning a life filled with promise, a life that should have stretched far beyond 21 years. The neighbors were shaken too, as many confessed they couldn't sleep after learning what had happened so close to their own homes. They replayed the noises they heard that night, wondering if they could have been done anything sooner. Probably she might still be alive. In court, the judge reminded everyone that Phoenix wasn't just a victim in a headline. She was a young woman with dreams, with plans, with a future she never got to live. She had been robbed not only of her life, but of every milestone ahead of her. Her birthdays, celebrations, relationships, a family of her own. Methven's sentence became more than just a punishment. It became a warning, a statement that violence hidden behind closed doors, disguised as love, or twisted into control will not go unanswered. But for Phoenix's family, no sentence will ever bring back the daughter they lost. Phoenix Spencer Horn's story is devastating not only because of the violence that ended her life, but because of the trust she placed in the person who betrayed her. Her future was stolen in a moment of brutality, followed by 2 days of deception, denial, and manipulation. And although the court delivered justice, the people who loved Phoenix will always carry the weight of her loss forever. Stories like Phoenix's remind us that behind every headline is a real human being. Families shattered, communities grieving, and futures taken far too soon. So now I want to hear from you. Do you think the sentence Methven received was enough? If Phoenix's story touched you, leave a comment, share your thoughts, and join the conversation. Together, we can honor victims, keep these stories alive, and build awareness that may prevent tragedies like this in the future. Thank you for watching.